I've been studying non-Aboriginal Australia with this, you know, the Dreamtime stories, and how you, and tourists, really love this idea of stories and of stories of creation. But what were they? What were they? What purpose did they have pre-European? These stories were a tool of education, a tool of learning, a tool of remembering. Dancing. You're depicting something. That's why anthropologists go out to the desert and they talk to, well, they used to talk to the old people, and they'd always say, and it was said many a times by many anthropologists and archaeologists, that, my goodness, those old four-bloods out there, they got minds like computers. Well, they had to. They did not have the luxury of flicking on a light switch, turning on the computer, whacking on the TV. Pre-colonisation, you were living amongst it. And later on tonight, the stars, the cosmos. Is this not science that we're talking about? The dark and the light? The time that the emu appears in the sky? Amazingly, coincidentally, relates to the emu on the land. The male emu that's really fat, and he's going to go and sit on the eggs to try and breed them up. That emu oil, you can buy it in the chemist, medicinal. You mix it with ochre, with the white ochre, and it can become a peroxide. While I'm on the ochres, people were covering themselves in it. Why would they, in an environment like this, cover themselves in a mixture of red ochre and emu fat? It's going to keep you warm, number one. It's a barrier from the cold. It's a barrier from the insects. It's a barrier from the sun in the big light. The big time, the big light's coming. It's going to be hitting 30 degrees soon. And the eyes of the old Nyungar people, they must have been so attuned to nature that it must have been they must have been a marvellous human being to be able to travel the land on a full moon. You know, like we've got special animals that can see at night with our owls and our herons and those sorts of birds. They're special. They're very special. And it's taken thousands and thousands of years for them to evolve into that. And that was the same for the other apex mammal that was on the landscape. The old Nyungar. They were so attuned to the environment and where to get sustenance, and this all had to be played out in ceremony time. There was no European bees here, for instance. Diabetes is rampant in Aboriginal communities today. It's a killer. We didn't have European bees in the southwest here. They were brought here. So what access to sugar did those old people have? Well, they evolved their taste buds. They loved the taste of the earth. They loved the taste of the medicines from the animals that they ate, and those animals were feeding on medicinal plants. So all this was getting ingested, so it was a natural medicine. They were taking it daily. The light and the dark, they believed it in their spirituality. The Nyungars were known as the Crow people at one stage. Crow people. Think about that for a minute. Dark, black, like midnight. What you just heard there was the manich, the white cockatoo. That was the other opposite totem. Moiety, if you like. of the Nyungar people. The dark and the light. They lived it. It was in the animals, it was in the plants, it was in the sky at night. Because, you know, you look at the sky tonight and you're going to have a city all around you. You're not going to see the black in deep winter. You don't see a blue sky like you do in summer. It's more black, and the stars are more prominent, and they would have appeared even closer. Their eyesights and their dexterity in the Gidji was phenomenal. It's been said that they can see the stars as though a European sees the stars in binoculars today. And you know, you take away the city lights and you're out in the bush. Just think about when you went camping. Was it comfortable? The last time you went camping, was it completely comfortable like you were at home? No, I don't think it was. You probably, even if you had a caravan, you still had to work. So you were working every day, every hour, and you were observing, and you were teaching the Kulunga, the children, your most important resource. Not money. It was about ensuring that the next generation has all the knowledge and all the tools to carry on. Anybody got a question at this stage? Nobody? I'll keep going. So this idea of dark and light and many seasons is studying every day, becoming, knowing when the animals are going to move and where they're going to move, where the plants are going to grow, where your condongs are going to grow, where your yams are going to grow. But there are a lot of yam growing in the Upper Swan, the old Nyungars. When the whitefellas came here, they tried to take their horses along the banks of the Lena River there. They couldn't. They couldn't control their horses because the ground was undulated. Because they were making special bowls, the old Nyungars, for these yams to grow. And as with the sugar thing, just getting back to that, and the yams, the Banksia, the time of the Banksias, where the whole Banksia grove areas were just fruiting. That's a form of sugar. So they would rejoice on that. When the yams were plentiful in the Upper Swan, they would rejoice, they would invite, they'd have big crops. They would invite their family and faraway people. Come, we can do ceremony now. We can get carbohydrates into our system. Kangaroos, you're not going to eat a skinny kangaroo, the fat and the thin. You're going to eat a fat kangaroo. You're not going to eat a skinny waich, emu. You're going to eat a fat one, because that nutrition, and that's only going to happen a certain time of the year when the emu appears in the sky. That old man's going to be sitting on his eggs, fat, trying to protect those eggs, and he's going to be easy hunting. A lot easier than trying to run 50 kilometres an hour after him. So he's going to be sitting there, he's easy prey, and he's got that goodness, and that goodness can be used for ceremony, can be used for nutrition, can be used for medicine, in addition using it with other plants. These things were important. In the deep southwest, when my grandmother's country, this is my grandfather's country here. All his people lived all up here right through to York. was all the one. They lived on, for example, like an estate. They had estates that they'd move through, just family groups. They didn't overpopulate. They didn't overharvest. In my grandmother's country, mullet hunting in the cold winter. They'd go and get mullet. Those mullet down there have all these big fat inside their guts when you gut them. You can actually use that fat to cook the mullet, to cook the protein. So you're getting not only the protein, you're getting the fat. And it's cold and you need fat, because you need to survive a bitter cold winter, the dark time of the year. And summer's the light time of the year. And you've got all these little intimate seasons overlapping in between. And they were able to read that. They had the eyesight, they had the hearing, they had the big broad noses for smelling. They were the apex mammal on the landscape. They knew what they were doing, they knew when to do it. And they also had, with these gatherings for law time and for ceremony time, they had the certain nutrition, your carbohydrates, your sugars. Those sugars from the Bankshirs, in the Bankshire groves in South Perth, for example. That used to be a huge Bankshire forest, and those sugars would bring animals. And when the plants started flowering, the possums would come in. So that's added protein. Easy. This is easy stuff. So in a way it wasn't, they knew so much and so they were so intimate with everything that life to them would not have been harsh or difficult. It's just normal. It's a normal way of living. And I see the beauty in it. And I'm proud of them for gaining all that knowledge through a scientific way of looking at the natural environment to survive. We all know that, blackfellas were expert trackers, and they've helped many times for lost people, black and white, around the country. And white people didn't know what they were looking at. An upturned stone, and just one, and you've got to walk 5 more metres, but probably in that direction because of the way that the stone's sitting. So I try to use that knowledge today, because I have in the past gone out for to observe when sacred sites are being desecrated or destroyed, and I learnt off my old people how to use that same process in a modern way to locate artefacts that people would generally not see in the ground. An example. Quartz that was used by the old people. Something called chert, which can only come between the basin, between the mainland and Rottnest chert. They found, before they found the chert, they found that quartz was the best thing to use for a cutting material and for dicing up meat, protein, vegetable matter, yams. They found a better one. Because you've got to remember now, it's only 7,000 to 10,000 years ago people walked to Rottnest. So they were in that valley, and the river went straight out from Fremantle to the north and around Rottnest, basically, to the continental shelf, where the old coast used to be. That's why the old stories about that relate to death in the spirit world and how a body was buried in a particular manner facing the east, that rising sun. And the spirits would sometimes hang in the mudjar tree, the Christmas tree I think you call it, we're almost there. For 2021, it'll be 2022 soon. The old people spirits apparently used to hang around those trees and in other areas before they went far off. Not to Wodjamup, not to Rottnest, but I'm talking about 40,000 years, not 7 to 10. So, you know, we've got to put everything into context here when we listen to Aboriginal people talking about the Swan River, Swan Coastal Plains area. I've heard people say that, oh, the spirits go, just go to Rottnest. Well, it doesn't make, my research doesn't say that, and my old people didn't say that. There's spirits over there, we all know that. But it's not the spirits of old. So there was that journey after life, which was respected. And in some cases, things were feared. The owls, the sounds of the owls in the bushes at night, in the bush at night. Some of them were screeching, like somebody's getting murdered out there. Like those old people would have been terrified, and they would have been, and they were part of that journey of understanding that you don't move into places that nature is telling you not to do, not to go there. See a snake going over here. Well, perhaps I won't go there. I'm going to do a big birth. You know, there was a reason for it. It wasn't just I might get bitten. Yeah, you might, but only if you step on him. But it was that religious aspect, if you like. They did believe, like non-Aboriginal people believe when they go to church, of an invisible God and an invisible place called heaven. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I'm talking about putting that religious feeling and aspect in modern day life to how did they live pre-1829? What did they believe in that ensured them that the population was not going to explode and overpopulate? Well, they had rules, they had law, they had customs, they had traditions to control all that. They wouldn't let an animal population overpopulate, because that would be bad for everything. So you'd probably utilise those animals. So it's all about an environment that satisfied them. It was about the change of season. It was about, very importantly, the dark and that light, and the many, many seasons in between that ensured that that knowledge in ceremony, in gatherings, you're going to be meeting your distant families, you're going to be understanding skin group business, you're going to understand who you can marry, who you can't marry. You know, what an amazing human race of people. I think I read something not long ago about how many full-blood Aboriginal people there are actually in Australia now. And it's getting down pretty low. There's lots of European blood and ancestry in the Aboriginal population today. But that's not to say they're not Aboriginal. I'm living proof of that. I've always been taught to be proud of who I am, where I come from, and to use the knowledge that I have to make a better world.